Sir Keir Starmer losing his cool in public. It was when he's being grilled by my next guest, the Tory MP Sir Bernard Jenkin, about defence spending at this important committee in the House of Commons.
It sounds as though you are at peace while we are actually at war. But this smacks of a lack of war-fighting mentality that reaches right across the government. So when are we going to be prepared, and prepared for what?
Keir Starmer was left visibly rattled under intense pressure as an MP ripped apart his handling of Britain's war readiness. What made the clash so damaging was that he was hammered over Cyprus, drones, military preparedness, and a country that still looks dangerously slow to adapt. Yet his answer kept sliding back to the mess he inherited instead of the emergency in front of him. As the danger escalated, Starmer looked like a leader cracking in real time.
But now we are facing an urgency. Why were we so unready to defend Cyprus?
Well, we've got a lot of defensive capability in Cyprus, as you know, including the air capability there.
Starmer appeared to walk in expecting another manageable session, only for Sir Bernard Jenkin to turn it into a direct assault on the government's entire security posture. Jenkin accused him of lacking a war-fighting mentality, demanded to know why Britain was so unprepared to defend Cyprus, and delivered the devastating charge that Starmer sounded like a man at peace while the country was facing live danger. When the moment called for command, Starmer reached for the process.
Even stop a 150 kilometre per mile an hour drone from getting through to hitting a sovereign base in Cyprus. That means we were unprepared. And the very fact that you immediately wanted to defend a destroyer meant you had failed to anticipate the need to defend Cyprus with a destroyer.
Let us talk about Cyprus, because this is where the argument stops being political theater and becomes something uncomfortably real. On the 2nd of March 2026, a Shahed-type drone struck RAF Akrotiri, a British sovereign base on the island. It caused damage. A fast, cheap one-way attack drone got through the defenses of a permanent UK military installation. After that happened, the government scrambled to reinforce the area. Extra air defense personnel were deployed. Naval assets were moved into position. Posture was adjusted. All of that reaction came after the drone hit, not before. That single fact is the most damaging thing Starmer faces in this story, and no amount of bureaucratic language makes it disappear.
But this smacks of a lack of war-fighting mentality that reaches right across the government, which is what we address in this paper about war-fighting readiness, where we are not at. And the chiefs of staff are saying, we need to be ready for war. So when are we going to be prepared, and prepared for what?
We are finalising the investment plan. That sits with the Strategic Defence Review.
Jenkin used Cyprus as a surgical instrument in that hearing. He did not need to prove that Britain is weak everywhere. He only needed one incident where Britain looked reactive instead of ready. He found it. He put it in front of the Prime Minister. And the Prime Minister's response did not match the gravity of the moment.
How many defence reviews do you think took place during the Second World War?
Well, I don't know off the top of my head, but I know that
the
I've got
answer
one
is
in front of
none.
me.
Well, because when you are at war, you get on with it. You don't wait around for a plan.
Then Jenkin asked a question that should have stopped the room. He asked how many defense reviews were conducted during the Second World War. Then he answered it himself: none. When a country is genuinely under threat, it does not hide behind reviews and plans and sequencing logic. It acts, it fights, it moves. The implication was clear, and it was savage. Britain right now is behaving like a country that still thinks it has time it does not have.
We're all agreed that the government is not on a war footing and needs to be very quickly. Why is it not on a war footing now?
Because the strategic review commits us to a war footing, and we now need to put the funding in place in order to get there. I've already announced the increase in defence spending to 2.5%, something that didn't happen under the last government, and where at the election a credible proposition wasn't put forward by your party. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do it properly, and I want to be able to explain to Parliament where the money is coming from.
Starmer had no answer that matched the emotional and strategic weight of that attack. He gave a technical reply. He talked about the process. He talked about the path to 2.5% of GDP on defense by 2027 and 3% in the next parliament. All of that might be true on paper. None of it sounded like a man who genuinely believed the building was on fire.
Here we are at war. You may not want to be at war, but we are at war. And people saying, oh, we shouldn't get too involved. But we're at war on two fronts. I mean, you ask the Russian foreign minister, he said Russia's at war with NATO and has been for years. And now Iran is actually attacking sovereign UK territory. And we didn't have the kit there to defend our troops.
Here is where it gets structurally devastating for the government. At almost the exact same moment Starmer was sitting in that committee room defending delay, Defense Secretary John Healey was telling Parliament something completely different. Healey revealed that UK forces had logged nearly 900 flying hours defending regional partners. He confirmed that an extra 500 air defense personnel had been sent to Cyprus. He announced that HMS Dragon had arrived in the Eastern Mediterranean for operational integration into Cyprus's defense. He described accelerated procurement and new defensive deployments across the Gulf.
The last meeting of the liaison committee, you said that it would be coming very, very soon. It was promised by the autumn of last year. We're now at the end of March. Will this be produced before the PERDA period? And is the defensive investment plan on your desk?
Defense investment plan already sitting on the table. Instead, that plan does not exist in public. It was supposed to arrive in autumn 2025. It did not come. Parliamentary committee chairs warned in January 2026 that further delay was sending damaging signals to adversaries. In March 2026, the MOD's own permanent secretary told MPs the plan would arrive as soon as we can. That answer landed with the credibility of a contractor telling you the kitchen will be finished soon.
The government is increasing the welfare spending much, much more substantially than it's increasing defence spending. And in fact, the increase in defence spending is very slight in cash terms and probably declining in real terms because defence costs inflation tends to run ahead of real inflation.
Now add the industrial dimension, because this is where the damage moves beyond Westminster. On the 24th of March 2026, industry figures told MPs directly that the delayed plan had left parts of the British defense sector in paralysis. Smaller firms are bleeding cash. Some businesses have already gone under. Investors are redirecting money to Germany and the United States, where governments have moved with more speed and clarity. Britain is not just losing time, it is losing capacity, capability, and confidence from the very industrial base it needs to build the military it says it wants. A missing plan is no longer just a communications embarrassment. It is eating into the readiness it was supposed to create.
Because nobody can see the benefit, but I think Bernard's absolutely right. And I've said for a long time, we are already at war. And war is not tanks rolling up Whitehall, it's cyber attacks on banking, it's cyber attacks that bring down transport systems, that destroy cables under the sea.
Yeah.
And we've seen absolutely what's happened in Ukraine, how they have been agile and flexible and adaptable, and how ironic that they have offered to help the Americans in the war against Iran, who are just burning dollars while drones are being fired off
they've
trucks.
offered to help us too.
Yeah,
when I was in
absolutely.
Ukraine, the Ukrainian Armed Forces says, we've made an offer to the Joint Expeditionary Force of NATO, which includes the British Army, to help you adapt your frontline forces on the NATO front line. Yeah.
The drone question carries even more strategic weight than it first appears. Jenkins' attack on drone readiness was not political theater. It was a challenge about whether Britain understands the nature of modern warfare. Ukraine changed the battlefield permanently. Cheap, fast, distributed drone technology has rewritten how wars are fought, how bases are defended, how supply lines are attacked. Starmer said he speaks regularly with Zelensky and that Britain is cooperating closely with Ukraine on drone and industrial capability. That may be true, but critics are not asking whether Britain is watching Ukraine. They are asking whether Britain is adapting as fast as the threat is moving. There is a difference between studying the lesson and living it.
The idea that the lack of the plan is not holding anything up is utterly ludicrous. Industry is crying out for certainty that it will bring, and the longer it's delayed, the longer that uncertainty exists. How can you create a 10-year plan without the Treasury making the necessary commitments for the next 10 years for the necessary levels of spending?
The most dangerous form of military criticism is not "you are underfunded." It is "you are preparing for the wrong war at the wrong speed." That is the charge buried inside the drone argument, and it does not go away with reassurances about regular phone calls with foreign leaders. What makes this politically harder for Starmer is the cross-party dimension. The warfighting readiness critique is not purely coming from the conservative opposition trying to exploit inherited blame. Jenkin has linked his challenge to cross-party work on Britain's transition to warfighting readiness. Multiple committee members were pushing beyond party lines. When criticism cannot be dismissed as tribal opposition, the government has to answer it on substance. And answering on substance requires the one thing the government still has not produced: a published, detailed, long-term funded defense investment plan.
Can you just go and explain to the Treasury at the Cobra meeting, we are at war and they ought to be on a war footing? A war footing means everything's changing very quickly. You look at how quickly the war has changed its character in Ukraine. We need to adapt to this new environment where drones have taken over from artillery, for example. I mean, we're not going to defend NATO with banks of troops, masses of troops. We don't have masses of troops in NATO.
Starmer's problem is deeper than optics. He is meant to project control, discipline, and command, yet when the pressure turned to war readiness and national danger, he fell back on blame and process instead of urgency and authority. That is what makes this so damaging. In a moment that demanded a commander, he sounded like a manager defending delay. And that failure lands even harder against the reality Britain is facing. The country has real bases, real deployments, real troops, and real threats stretching from Cyprus to the Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz. Yet the government still looks trapped between emergency reaction and strategic drift. It is moving assets and scrambling to reinforce positions, but the long-promised investment plan is still missing. That is the brutal question hanging over Downing Street now. If the danger is real enough for urgent military action, why is the strategy still not ready?